On this two-part episode of Not Rod Shop, I stuff a 350 and a 3-speed in a 72 Nova and go drag racing for the first time in my life. Okay, so I bought this 72 Nova off of Craigslist for $1,800. The plan is to eventually make this thing really nice, clean it up, paint it, but that's not what we're going to do right now. For now, we're going to slap a V8 in this thing, get it running and driving, and hopefully do some burnouts with it. One of the first problems that I noticed with it is it's obviously been wrecked over on this side. You can see the frame is just totally mangled right here. And my initial plan was to just put some heat to this and massage it out with a hammer and make that work. But the other problem that we have with it is these bushings are just completely garbage. So I did some looking on Craigslist and then I found this subframe assembly right here. So what we're actually going to do, since we got to tear all the control arms and everything off to replace the bushings anyway, is we're just going to replace the entire subframe while we're doing that. So we're going to do that right now.
Well, we probably should have loosened up these wheels before we jacked it up.
Finally. So last night we finished taking out the subframe, we took all the control arms off. The bushings fought us basically the entire way, so we were up until about midnight messing with this thing, trying to get it all apart. Finally got the subframe tore out. We had one subframe bolt that was really fighting with us really bad. We tried heating it up and even that didn't want to do it. And finally the nut spun inside of its retainer. So we ended up having to cut the retainer out to get the nut and everything out and cut the bolt in half. And so now we got to chase the threads on the nut and get all that put back together and weld the retainer back in. And then we can put the subframe in. So now I'm going to chase the threads on the nut that got all messed up when we tried to pull it out of the car. We managed to get the bolt out of it here in the vise. So now, the bolt should go right in there theoretically. And then this retainer gets spot welded down to the car. And we really had no choice but to completely mangle this whole retainer to get it out of the car. And then on the vise, I just kind of took and bent it all back into shape, and it actually looks pretty good, so we're just going to reuse it. And this retainer kind of has to be positioned just right so that you'll actually have a little bit of slop in there so that you can get the frame adjusted side to side and forward and back how it needs to be. That looks pretty good. Yeah, I think we can tack it in place. Cool. Now I can slap the subframe on. We found out X-body cars like Novas use this half-inch spacer where other cars don't. Oh, me. Of course that would do that. Whew, look at that pretty subframe underneath such a rotten old car.
Yeah. Yeah, that's maybe an 1/8 difference to the whole, to the body.
I'm kind of thinking we run with it. And
how bad could it be, right?
yeah. I mean, it probably didn't drive straight before, so worst case, it just won't drive straight still. So now we just got a whole bunch of really boring stuff to do, like cleaning up the A-arms, painting them, all that kind of stuff. And then putting bushings back in.
Yep.
I'm using zero rust, and this will actually convert rust into like a zinc phosphate coating or something like that, so you can spray right over the rust and it works just fine.
Not exactly show quality, but I think it'll do the trick.
You gotta put one bushing in, and then you put the shaft in, and then you put the other bushing in. This is what we call an econo press. Ah, I forgot to put the shaft in.
Well, it looks like one of them will be coming out.
So anyone putting one of these together, don't do like I did and forget to put this bar in before you put both bushings in. It has been a long time since this car has rolled, because there is probably more spider webs in here than there are brake parts. But now it gets a little bit more exciting, because we get to start installing shiny new parts from our parts pyramid. Right now I'm just matching up the marks that I put on this spring earlier, so that when we get the spring back in here, everything should theoretically be able to come back apart without these things getting stuck in there and binding up and stuff.
Well, that went pretty good.
So I went through the trouble of getting a thread chaser kit and chasing these old rotten bolts, and it turns out that the disc brake kit gives you new ones. This control arm, when I first got the car, has always been missing the little washer that's supposed to go here, and it's kind of a special one because it's supposed to have a curve to it. And we looked all over in the car. There was a big can of bolts in the back of the car, but it wasn't in there, and we just can't find it. So I actually went and got this off of the shock from a Cherokee in a junkyard. And it's not exact, but it looks like it should work pretty good, so that's what we're going to use. Guess we'll just drag that. And I just love the 70s vibe that I get from this car. I mean, you've got what looks like this crazy Van Halen pinstripe job that somebody did to it way back when. It has this zebra stripe tinting job on the back window, and it's got this diamond fabric over on the windshield pillar.
And next is to put on tie rod ends. Next question. Which side goes to what?
I was hoping you would have kept track of that when you took it
I was hoping
apart.
I would have too.
So this seal popped out of the rotor way too easy. They should be a real nice tight fit. So we're just going to take a hammer and punch and put a few dimples in it so that it seats in the rotor better. So for those of you that have never done a set of brakes before, there is a left and a right caliper, one for the driver's side and one for the passenger side. The thing to remember is that with this piston on the inside of the car, this bleeder screw has to be facing upwards. You don't want your line where the fluid comes into the piston to be at the top. If your line is at the top, you're not going to be able to bleed your brakes. Okay, so now this side's all done. Now I just got to go do the other side. It's 2 weeks later. and fall is upon us. Over the last couple weeks, I've just been getting the car ready for an engine to go in there. Small things. I installed the sway bar. I installed the passenger side hardline for that brake on the passenger side. Installing motor mounts, things like that. We're hoping that we can actually get the engine installed today. But first, we've got to get the clutch set up. And what I'm doing is I'm making my own hydraulic clutch. What you do is you get this master cylinder and this clutch slave cylinder for a 58 Ford F100. And that way these are properly sized. They're both 1 1/16 bore. I've used this setup before on Chevy small blocks and other vehicles that I've done, and it works really well. This master cylinder was $26. This slave cylinder was $12. So for about 38 bucks, I could make my own hydraulic clutch setup. The problem, however, on this car is the clutch rod comes through this hole right here at a downward angle. So you have to get your master cylinder in here somehow. And you can see that that's just not going to work because you can't pull the cap off, you can't fill it with fluid, it's just not going to work. So what I did is I got this Willwood master cylinder set up, and these come in different bore sizes ranging all the way from I think 1/2 inch up to 1 1/8. This one is 1 inch because it jumps from 1 inch to 1 1/8, so I couldn't get an 1 1/16 to match this, so I just went to 1 inch. So we'll see how that works. The cool thing about this setup is that this reservoir comes off. You put this little guy right onto here, and then you have a hose that comes up to a remote reservoir that'll be attached to this bracket, and then we'll just mount the bracket somewhere on the firewall like that. And then on the engine, this should work pretty good because this is going to come right down here with a little rod that pushes on the clutch fork, and then all we got to do is have a straight bracket that comes right off the bell housing here, maybe connect it to these 2 bolts, and then just drill some holes in the bracket, weld some nuts on the end, and we can just bolt right through here and have a pretty good clutch setup. Unfortunately, since I couldn't use that and I got to use this was about 80 some odd dollars. So I'm still under $100 for my own hydraulic clutch setup. The next cheapest option would have cost $275. So for essentially 1/3 of the price, and then just making my own brackets, I've made my own hydraulic clutch. Here it is, the motivation. I got this engine out of my 72 C10 that I put a 5.3 liter and a 4L60E in out of a 2001 Silverado a while back. That truck runs with that setup, but it needs a little bit of work, so you'll probably see that on a future episode at some point. I'm pretty sure this is the factory engine and transmission combo that came in that truck. It's still got what I think are the factory dished pistons. The bottom end is honestly probably kind of tired, but it's got world product heads with 202 intake valves, 160 exhaust, and 64cc combustion chambers. So it moved that 4,000-pound truck down the road just fine. This here is actually a Muncie 3-speed, and I abused the hell out of this thing in that truck, and it has always held up just fine. Obviously, I would have preferred to go with like a Muncie 4-speed, like an M21 or something like that. But rather than spend $1,000 on that when I'm already spending a whole bunch of money on everything else on this car, I just decided to run what I have. So the bracket that we made for the clutch slave cylinder is hitting on the firewall of the car, trying to put it in, and it is leaving it so where it's just barely wants to go in, but it's just not quite. We could probably fiddle with it a little bit more and see if it'll go in, but the other issue I'm worried about is that that'll probably make a whole bunch of noise anytime you're torquing the motor or anything like that. So we may need to redesign that mount. We're not sure right now, but we're going to try to figure it out.
A little cutting and welding. We'll get her all fixed up.
So yeah, we pulled the engine and modified the bracket. A little bit of lint down in there. no big deal. Oh. Oh, well that might be a problem. Yeah, Ford kind of has their shit together. When you go to adjust the timing, that can't be right.
GI distributor clearance in a 72 Nova. It says probably not.
Now it looks like it was made for it. Yeah, you know what? I think the firewall was just deformed before from the accident. So now
that's what it was.
Now it's where it's supposed to be.
That's right. Okay. Oh, hey.
Perfect, right?
Nice.
You can't even tell the firewall's dented.
Nope. That looks good too. Yeah. Sweet.
That's a factory installed.
All right.
The passenger side header fit perfect, but since these were truck headers that we just pulled out from under the bench, the driver's side header just would not clear the steering box. We tried from the bottom, from the top, and it just wasn't happening. Luckily, Brandon is great at building exhaust though, so he was able to modify the header really nicely to fit. Well, sort of.
Good. Oh, this is some of my best work yet. Oh man, I don't know. All right, well this is a sweet weld job. We'll see if it works.
Okay, so we wanted to get the engine running tonight. In fact, the whole passenger side of the engine is done. Spark plugs, wires, batteries hooked up to the starter, everything's all ready to go. And Brandon did a fantastic job over here on these headers to get them all put in there tonight so that it would clear the steering box and everything. However, there's just one little problem with how the tube was made, is that when you try to stick a spark plug in here, it's not possible. It just does not work at all. So we don't feel like pulling all that back out apart tonight, and so that's going to kind of stall us right here until later. After not being able to get the car running over the weekend, I really just needed some more win on this thing. So I'm going to go ahead and finish the clutch master cylinder bracket that I was building before, and hopefully get it all set up and adjusted. I made this plate right here that has a hole in the center for the master cylinder, and then these two bolt holes. This is going to get welded to this piece of exhaust pipe right here, and then the whole thing will slide over the top of this and bolt together. And then I've got to cut the correct angle on this pipe and then weld that to this flange that I built. Mounts to the brake master cylinder brackets. Kind of hokey looking, but you know, it'll work for now until I figure out something better in the future. So there it is, our bracket. Okay, we're just going to give it one last test fit here. Make sure it all goes together. Okay, so when we first went to put the engine in, we had some things that were kind of fighting with us. First, the bracket that Brandon built for the clutch slave cylinder interfered with the firewall, so we had to pull the motor back out. He cut the top off of that and put a bevel on it to make it fit. Then our transmission mount was too thick, So I ordered up a thinner one, and it looks like that one's going to work. Then he put together a header for it. We had to modify one pipe, and then unfortunately he built it so that that header tube was in the way of the spark plug hole. So then that header had to come back out and get modified again. Now that's in and we got the spark plugs in and that works. The other problem that we now have that we're going to have to fix is the clutch fork. Looks like when you push on the clutch, it's actually going to hit the floor of the car when the slave cylinder actually pushes on the clutch fork. So we're going to have to deal with that. That's just a matter of cutting out the floor and then maybe putting a patch in that doesn't interfere with it. But for right now, we want to get the engine running just to make sure that it runs and everything. We cut these belts off so the fan's not going to spin, and it doesn't have water in it, so we're not going to run it very long. But this will give us an idea of how it runs. I'm just filling up the bowl on the carburetor.
Fire danger to a minimum.
Hopefully. And then here is my ignition setup. I just have battery cable going to the starter lug. This is our ignition wire going to the distributor. It's a quick release, so all you got to do is just pull on it and it'll shut the engine off. It's actually an emergency measure. It's great. And then our starter solenoid wire. Sweet! I have a 72 Nova that runs. All right, now we can start putting everything else back together. Fenders and fuel pump. We got a big list we put together, so we'll get everything put together and then hopefully drive it today. Since everything else hasn't gone wrong on this, that should be a pretty reasonable goal.
Right.
A lot of people don't know that if you take this little teeny tiny bolt out of there, and while you're holding up on the shaft, you just take a longer bolt, put it in that hole, and all the way until it stops. And then that holds the shaft in place for you while you put the fuel pump in. We made some pretty good progress today. The motor runs off of the gas tank that's in the car. We got gauges in the car. We've got the start button and the ignition switch in the car. We think we still have some timing to play with. We couldn't really get it to rev down low because the gasket between the carburetor and the intake manifold is wrong, so we think we got a vacuum leak too, so it won't idle. So we want to fix that before we go any further with like timing or anything like that. We've got to get the other fender on, so pretty soon we're ready to rock and roll. There's actually a test and tune going on at Pacific Raceways this weekend, so I'm hoping that we'll be able to have this thing ready for then. We'll see. Even if we do, I don't know if it'll pass tech, but we're going to try. Long story short, life happened, and I was only able to put a couple of hours worth of work into the car until the night before the test and tune. Brandon is working today, so it's just me out here by myself. Want to get a few things finished up. The last test and tune of the year is tomorrow, so trying to get as much done as I can. Still need to do some small things like putting the battery tray in. I want to get the upper radiator support in that the car is supposed to have rather than just these chintzy little brackets that we have on there now. I still don't have a drive line. That won't be here until hopefully tomorrow, but we should have enough time to get that in and get the thing rolling. The engine still needs some tuning work done. I might have to pull the carburetor off and rebuild that. But what I'm going to do right now is I'm just going to go ahead and paint the aluminum core of the radiator black, because that's really important. Brandon just happened to have these nice bucket seats laying around, so I'm just going to go ahead and use them. I didn't want to pay 30 bucks for some of the stupid knobs they have at the auto parts store, so I'm making my own. This is actually a piece of exhaust pipe that came from Brandon's Harley. I don't think he'll mind if I use it. Perfect. Pretty ergonomic, actually. So now I've just got to make my own brackets to get those seats to actually bolt into the car. I picked up a driveline for the Nova, another Craigslist item, so we can drive it out of the shop and do some tuning so we're not suffocating ourselves in here. Today was the day of the test and tune, and although we'd come a long way, there was still a bunch of stuff to get done before we were ready to race. This was the first time the car had rolled under its own power in I don't know how long. I have no evidence to support this at all, but looking around at this car, I can't help but feel like it was driven up until about 1979, when it was wrecked 2 days after the owner did a brake job on it.
No brakes?
No brakes. I might want to bleed those.
Yeah? What do you think? Do I kind of maybe try and start it up and let it warm up a little bit and see how it's running?
Probably
check the timing?
Throw a block in front of the wheel. We were having trouble getting the engine to idle because the carb had sit around for so long, which made it really difficult to get the timing right.
That's right there. We may actually want to run it up higher then.
Slightly more timing, you think?
Yeah.
We finally got the timing sorted out to where the engine would run on its own, but then we started springing the inevitable leaks. Yeah, you knew that was coming.
Just a little bit of a leak there. So it's coming from the valve cover.
Yep, that's why. Zipper was all the way tucked up in there.
Well, that'll do it.
Oh.
All right.
So, hopefully that stays there. I probably should have siliconed it to the pan, but oh well.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, nothing? By the time we finally got everything sorted out, it was way too late to be able to make it to the strip before they closed. But against better judgment, we were itching to at least take it on the road.
Hold.
And just like I figured would happen, the float stuck again and started pouring fuel everywhere with open headers right beneath, so we ended the night by towing the car back to the shop. I was only going to use the Rochester because I had it, and I thought it might run okay. It did for a little while, but now that's looking like it'll need to be rebuilt anyway, so I decided to just go ahead and get a Holly for it. 125 bucks on Craigslist, and since I already have a full jet kit as well as multiple rebuild kits for a Holly, it'd be much more preferable to just go ahead and rebuild this Holly and put it all together with that. Take this guy, set it on top of all of these. As you can see, it was just one problem after another to put this car together, but we finally did it, little more than a month after pulling the subframe out from underneath, mostly working on it on weekends. We actually did some pretty good stuff to it too. Power disc brakes, reused the original power steering, and replaced every piece of rubber in the front end. Sure, it's not perfect, but that wasn't the point. I get to own and drive one of my childhood dream cars for well under 10,000 bucks, a car that we brought back from the dead. And that's what Knot Rod Shop is all about. So this stuff is all installed extremely poorly. Yes, that's right. We had resorted to using twist ties because we ran out of zip ties. I think it's just paint. The cool thing is, even though this is my car, I somehow talked him into going down there, laying on the floor and doing that while I sit here on this comfy stool. I don't know. When I was looking it up, they said winter.
Well, if that's what they said.
You know, and I'm sure, was, you know, a redneck hick from Tennessee, so.
Well, they may have done it more times than me.
Exactly. They're professionals. They know what they're doing.
Yeah, where did the spacers go? They were just... Did we f***ing lose them again?
And then after that, we'll see where we go from there. I'm not exactly sure myself. Maybe we'll put the master cylinder on. Maybe we won't. I don't know. How's that?
It's good.
That's good. Maybe we will, maybe we won't. We will just have to find out.
Because then you have to put a wrench in there, and who wants to do that?